Kyle was a gifted swordsman who rose to become the hero and defeated the Demon King. Yet he did not feel satisfied, for by that time he had already lost everything that he held dear. By fortune, a magic crystal belonging to the fallen Demon King carried him 4 years into the past. With that second chance, Kyle resolved to rewrite the world's fate and save every person he loved from the demon army. Upon the continent of Lunders, 2 opposing powers existed. On the right side dwelled the races favored by the god of light, which included humans, dwarves, and elves. On the left side lived the demons, who were granted blessings by the god of darkness. For thousands of years these forces waged war without rest. Yet 3 centuries ago, a rather peace-loving demon king had ascended to the throne and halted all aggression against the humanoids. The humans and their allies grew accustomed to this uneasy truce and were unprepared for what was to come. In the 5th month of the year 2826, a new demon king claimed the throne. Under his command, the demon army unleashed a ruthless assault upon the humanoids, an event that would later be remembered as the Great Invasion. Kingdoms of men and allies were swept aside in days, and even the mightiest empire could not shield itself. As despair deepened, the humanoids enacted a desperate gamble by deceiving their surviving soldiers and throwing everything into an all-out war. While the armies clashed against the demon forces and their generals, a hand-picked group of the strongest warriors was sent to infiltrate the Demon King's fortress and assassinate him. Kyle led that team, alongside his dearest friend Theron and the elf mage Urza. As they sprinted down a corridor, a sudden explosion ripped through the walls, scattering them apart and instantly killing the soldiers who followed. Theron was injured in the blast, and as he spotted 2 demons guarding a chained female demon, he understood the truth. He would need to hold them off to protect the mission. He told Kyle and Urza to proceed without him, promising he would rejoin them when the battle was done. But Kyle knew full well that his companion was choosing to sacrifice his life to stall the 2 guards. While Theron clashed alone, Kyle and Urza pressed onward until they reached the throne chamber. Kyle swallowed a vial of concentrated roid juice, a stimulant that allowed him to fight at peak strength. Urza, however, looked downhearted, for she understood that the medicine's aftereffects would eventually claim his life. Kyle then pushed open the doors to the throne room and discovered a glowing gemstone at its center. Curious, he stepped forward to investigate. At that instant, Urza cried out a warning of an attack descending from above. Kyle managed to deflect some of the dark orbs with his sword, yet several slipped past and forced him to his knees. Soon, a massive orb far more dreadful hurtled toward him while he remained unable to move. Urza rushed forward, raising a magical barrier to protect them both. The defense shattered, and the orb began to consume her. With a final smile toward Kyle, she allowed herself to be erased from existence. It was then that the Demon King descended from the ceiling. Consumed with fury, Kyle stood and converted his rage into strength, cutting through the spheres hurled at him. Yet the Demon King's body was shrouded by a dense shell of mana, rendering Kyle's efforts useless. Relentless strikes forced Kyle to retreat, and he hid behind a pillar. The Demon King unleashed a void orb, which devoured the stone support entirely, leaving Kyle exposed once more. Ravaged by further attacks, he staggered and suffered grievous wounds. In desperation, Kyle called upon the AI voice sealed within his sword's gemstone, asking about the devastating spell from earlier. The enchanted assistant, like an upgraded Alexa, explained that the technique was an unblockable high-tier sorcery that annihilated anything it touched. Kyle realized that victory was impossible unless he resolved to abandon his own life. He commanded Alexa to release the gemstone's full power. Obediently, the spirit awakened the relic, and its brilliance enveloped Kyle in a radiant aura that repelled all assaults from the Demon King. Bursting forward at full speed, he shattered the enemy's weapon and drove his blade deep into the Demon King's chest. Yet in that moment the Demon Lord struck back, landing a mortal blow upon Kyle as well. Undeterred, Kyle pressed ahead until both his sword and the gemstone crumbled into fragments. That final thrust, however, was enough to bring the Demon King down, his body bursting into countless black feathers. As Kyle's strength faded, he thought to himself that the battle had finally ended, and now he could surrender to death in peace. He keeps thinking about how everything he once wanted to protect has already slipped away, including his family, his comrades, and even the girl he deeply loved. He falls to the ground, only for a dark feather to drop beside him and vanish like smoke in the wind. The very next instant, the magic gemstone begins to glow ominously. Kyle drags himself back up and realizes that if the crystal loses control, the consequences could be catastrophic. Stumbling forward with each heavy step, he forces himself closer until his hands grab the glowing crystal. Immediately, a massive magic circle appears beneath his feet and envelopes him. When Kyle next opens his eyes, he is shocked to see that he is back in his own room, with his town still standing and unharmed. Tears spill down his face as he assumes this is nothing but a sweet dream before his final rest in the afterlife. At that moment, his childhood friend Lise bursts into his room to wake him up. She freezes in concern when she notices his tear-filled eyes, but Kyle cannot control his emotions upon seeing her alive once again. He hugs her so tightly that Lise, the tough tomboy, blushes red like a tomato at a festival. Since Kyle still doubts if this is real, his hands wander a little too far south, and while fumbling with his balance, he trips and falls on top of her as she lies on the bed. That awkward scene overloads Lisa's patience, so she hurls him across the room and delivers a rib-cracking punch that leaves him rolling on the floor gasping like a fish out of water. She yells at him to at least take her out for dinner before skipping straight to second base, and then bolts out of the room in embarrassment. Kyle finally notices that the pain from her punch feels real, which proves this is no dream. Suddenly, his eyes land on the same red crystal from the Demon King's castle, still in his possession, and confusion floods his mind. He realizes that he looks much younger and shows no scars or injuries, making him wonder what exactly is going on. He begins suspecting the unthinkable, that he has somehow returned to the past. But he quickly shakes the thought away, joking to himself that if time travel were possible, surely someone would have shown up at Stephen Hawking's party already. Before he can think further, his stomach growls like a beast, distracting him from his theories. On the table, he finds a lavish meal waiting for him, clearly cooked by Lise, since neither he nor his mother can boil water properly. He gratefully digs in, savoring homemade food for the first time in years, and overeats until every last bite vanishes. Just then, his best friend Theron walks in and stares at the empty table in horror. He asks Kyle if he is secretly training to beat Luffy in an eating competition, because it looks like the poor food had no chance of survival. He grunts in disappointment, admitting he had also been eyeing the delicious meal. But before he can sulk any longer, Kyle abruptly asks him about the date. When Theron casually says it is the 5th month of the year 2823, Kyle freezes. That means he has truly returned to the past. Theron grins and reminds him that today also happens to be his birthday, and he will forgive him for eating all the food if Kyle considers it his birthday present. Theron cheerfully decides to beg Lise to whip up another dish for him, while Kyle silently decides he needs real answers. He heads into the storeroom beside his house, then descends into the basement that his mother has transformed into a vast personal library. The moment Kyle lays eyes on her, memories of finding her dead body in the previous timeline stab at his heart, but he steadies himself when she speaks. He tells her that he has a question about magic. Since she is one of the few archmages in the entire kingdom, practically no one alive knows more about magic than her. His mother beams with joy upon hearing his request, and Kyle wastes no time asking if there are any spells that can turn back time. She explains that while there are spells capable of manipulating time, they are essentially impossible to cast because of the astronomical mana requirements. Even the greatest mage in history could not rewind time by a single second. Kyle presses further, asking if it might be possible through a magic tool designed to store mana. His mother nods that it is an interesting concept, but gathering that much energy would take at least 1,000 years. Kyle takes the thought further, asking what would happen if someone used a forbidden right to convert human life force into magical energy. She pauses, thinking deeply, and admits it would still be highly inefficient. To produce that amount of power, at least half the population of the continent would need to be sacrificed. Worse, there is currently no known magical tool that could contain such overwhelming mana. However, she finally adds that there is one exception. Pulling out an ancient book, she tells him about the Heart of the Divine Dragon, a legendary artifact once wielded by the ancient magic kingdom of Zarls. The dragon's heart allowed their civilization to flourish in ways the world had never seen. But eventually, its power burned out, and when the kingdom could no longer sustain itself without it, Zarls was reduced to ruin. His mother explains that the dragon's heart holds enough power to store limitless magic, even enough to travel back through time itself. But she also tells him that the artifact vanished about 1,000 years ago when the ancient kingdom collapsed into dust. She suspects that demons may have discovered it since then, though Kyle silently knows her guess is painfully accurate. He cannot reveal the truth to her yet. Later, Kyle heads up to his favorite spot overlooking the town. As he gazes down at the peaceful scenery, he cannot help but wonder why the Demon King had been hoarding so much mana just to rewind time. His thoughts spiral, but they are interrupted when Lise suddenly shows up. She is still fuming from the morning's embarrassing incident. Kyle immediately drops to his knees in dramatic fashion and apologizes, explaining that his actions earlier were because he had a deeply troubling dream that shook him to the core. Lise instantly realizes that the dream must have shown her dying, and the thought softens her heart. She chooses to forgive Kyle this time, although her cheeks are still puffed up with leftover irritation. After that, she wishes him a happy birthday, and the words strike Kyle like a blade of memory. He recalls the invasion of the demon army that began with his hometown, because their village stood at the border region. The demons set everything ablaze, turning their town to ashes and slaughtering all who lived there. That was the day he lost Lise forever. In the past timeline, he swore vengeance against the demons for taking her away, but now, standing at the edge of this new beginning, he makes a different vow. This time, he will protect Lise, his family, and everyone else he loves. With fierce determination burning in his chest, Kyle declares that he will rewrite his destiny and reshape the fate of the world, no matter the cost. That night, he notes down all major events that are going to happen soon, hoping it will help him prepare for the future. But he knows that this alone will not be enough. He thinks that he should begin his journey by resuming his training, and so he heads to the woods to test his current skill level. The first thing he does is conjure up a mental image of the Demon King and then tries fighting against the memory of him. The Demon King ends up being his imaginary last boss, and Kyle physically feels the strikes when he attempts to block them with his sword. He cannot keep up with the quick assaults of the Demon King because his body lacks practice, so he decides to compensate with magic. He casts spells to raise his speed and agility, and discovers that his spells are much more effective now. He does not think too deeply about why this is happening, and simply charges directly toward the Demon Lord. At first, the Demon King behaves like a stormtrooper, missing his shots, but then lands an unexpected head strike that drops Kyle to the ground. He realizes that even with boosted magic, his body still cannot match skill with skill, and he must train harder if he truly wants to change the future. While he lies on the ground catching his breath, Lise and Theron watch him from behind the bushes, puzzled about what has gotten into him, since only 3 days ago he would have already given up. At that moment, Theon's mother Layla appears, and after checking in with Lise and Theron, she asks what is going on with Kyle, because it looks like he is training to face a frighteningly fast and strong opponent. Lise admits that she is also confused, because just a few days ago Kyle was completely unmotivated and depressed, something Theon can also confirm. Layla then remarks that when a man suddenly shows this much drive, the reason is usually a woman. Lise is stunned to hear this. Seeing her so startled and jealous makes Layla reconsider, and she jokingly claims that if Kyle ever made it to second base with a woman, it would definitely be Lise. Lise does not understand that and, fueled by jealousy, she storms over to Kyle, grabs his collar, and demands to know who he is fooling around with. She shakes him so roughly that in the end Kyle ends up throwing up his breakfast, which appears to have been mostly salad judging from the color. Later, she cooks a delicious lunch to apologize for her jealous outburst, and everyone is grateful for the meal. With everyone gathered in one place, Kyle asks them who in the world has enough influence to gain the attention of multiple nations. Theon replies that any king can achieve that. Kyle's mother adds that the highest-ranking priests of the Earth Goddess also hold tremendous influence. Layla thinks a bit longer and then mentions that the hero Randolph, who defeated the Demon King 3 centuries ago, is still highly respected and that all humanoid species would listen to him. Now Kyle has his answer about who the most influential people are on the continent. He understands that he cannot become a king or a high-ranking priest in just 2 years, but he can aim to become a hero, and through that title he could rally humans to prepare for war. Later that night, Kyle is studying alone in his room when Theon visits him. He is surprised to find him surrounded by so many books, and asks whether he is truly serious about becoming a hero. Kyle replies that he intends to work hard toward it and asks Theon if he has any helpful ideas. Theon simply tells him to go and slay the Demon Lord, since that would guarantee him the title of hero. But Kyle reminds him that low-key, it is the ultimate goal. Theon insists that to be recognized as a hero one must have strength, yet Kyle argues that money is more important. He explains that although a hero does not take rewards or payments for helping people, he still requires money to travel and maintain his gear. Theon acknowledges this point, and Kyle goes on to say that another essential trait of a hero is forming connections with the rich and powerful. The third element is luck, since only those who happen to be in the right place at the right time gain the chance to rise as heroes. Kyle declares that he is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve this. Theon, however, notes that such a declaration does not sound like something a true hero would say. He feels that Kyle does not truly desire to be the hero itself, but instead views the role as a stepping stone towards some other greater purpose. Kyle admits that this is correct, but asks Theon to trust him for now. Theon wishes him good luck, though Kyle secretly plans to involve him in his scheme soon. He then resumes working on his strategy to acquire money, forge connections, and secure luck. Not long after, he informs Layla, who is also his teacher, that he intends to set out on a journey. Layla approves of the idea and tells him to take her son along as well. This was Kyle's plan from the beginning, and he gratefully thanks the muscle mommy for granting permission. Theon protests, asking if anyone intends to ask for his consent in the matter. Soon afterward, Kyle tells Lise about his plan to leave for a journey to the capital and beyond. Before she can even respond, Kyle makes it clear that he will not take her along no matter how much she begs. She becomes furious that he is bringing Theron, and not her, even though she is also training and strong enough to handle herself. Kyle simply says bros before hoes and insists that he wants her to stay somewhere safe, because his journey is going to be dangerous. Lise is about to argue, but this time Kyle quickly kisses her, leaving her completely speechless. He promises that when he returns, she will be the very first person he wants to see. Lise cannot bring herself to say anything more, and instead she just asks him to promise that he will come back home safe. After that, they go to the market for some shopping before his departure. While there, Lise notices a beautiful elf in the distance. The moment Kyle sees her side profile, he recognizes the elf named Oza and walks straight toward her, ignoring Lise completely. When he reaches Oza, memories from his past life come flooding back, reminding him that she became his main girl after he lost Lise. He recalls one of their private moments where she told him to use her real name only in private. But in the present moment, Kyle slips up and accidentally calls her by that true name out loud. The elf girl, who normally goes by the name Oza, is startled because this is her first time meeting him. She instantly prepares to draw her weapon, and Kyle panics as he realizes his mistake. He grabs her hand to stop her and then casts a spell to put her to sleep, because knowing her true name is a dangerous secret. She collapses in his arms, and while Kyle wonders how to explain everything to her when she wakes, he realizes he has a bigger problem. Lise is standing right behind him, furious beyond words, catching him red-handed in what looks like cheating only hours after their very first kiss. Kyle tries to explain, but she refuses to hear a word and declares that she will join him on the journey, just to make sure he does not mess around with other girls while she waits for him. Later, Oza wakes up in Kyle's house and nearly attacks him. She demands to know how he knows her real name, since only she and her parents are aware of it. Kyle cannot possibly tell her that 4 years from now she will willingly reveal it to him after they fall in love. Instead, he promises to explain everything later. Oza is unsatisfied with that, so Kyle suggests they sign an application of contract that will prevent him from ever using her real name for evil purposes. She is stunned, because ordinary humans are not supposed to know about that kind of contract. She asks if he is serious, reminding him that if he ever breaks it, he will die. Kyle assures her that he is serious and ready to sign the contract immediately. But she informs him that the contract can only be formed under the full moon, which is still a few days away. She decides she will stay in the town until then, but Kyle shocks her by saying he will be leaving on a journey the very next day. With no choice, Oza agrees to come with him. Lise also insists on tagging along to stop the elf from stealing her man. The next morning, as Kyle and his group prepare to depart, his mother grows emotional and his father also shows up. Kyle almost does not recognize his father's face, since he is rarely ever around. With that, the four of them set off on their journey. Along the way, Kyle essentially wears Oza down into accepting her place in the party. He then explains that instead of heading straight for the capital, he wants to first go to the Sunnard Mountains, where the legendary Magic Queen's dungeon is said to be located. Theon dismisses it as only a legend, but Kyle pulls out a map of the dungeon and insists that it is real, even pointing out the treasure room marked on it. Both Theon and Lise pity him, assuming that someone scammed him by selling a fake map, and Kyle understands why they would think that. However, when Oza examines it, she says the map is created from the bark of the world tree using a method that went extinct 2,000 years ago, which proves it is authentic. Immediately, Theon and Lise believe her, much to Kyle's annoyance. Still, they remark that the treasure room is far away and will take too long to reach. Kyle assures them that he has a plan, digging a tunnel directly to the treasure room to save time. While Kyle and Theron work on digging, Oza takes on the role of strict taskmaster, ordering them to do the job properly. During the nights, Lise prepares meals for the group, even making dinner from a bear she had killed with her bare hands. After several days of hard work, they are nearly at the treasure room. When Kyle finds himself alone with Oza, she takes the chance to have a serious talk. She demands to know why he is so desperate to become a hero, and whether it has anything to do with his knowledge of her true name. Just as Kyle is debating whether or not to tell her the truth, he finally breaks through the wall and opens the way to the treasure room, cutting their conversation short. He immediately tells Oza to call Theron and Lise to come quickly. They march into the treasure room as a group, and the mountain of gold instantly drives Theon into madness as he dives straight into the shiny heap, and begins yelling like a maniac who just won the lottery. Kyle warns the girls not to end up acting like that golden fool. Right after, he chooses to let everyone get distracted by coins, and quietly slips away to a hidden chamber where the true prize is stored, which turns out to be the sword he wielded in his past life. The blade manifests before him in the form of a cheeky little spirit who congratulates him for clearing the trials and making it there safely, but Kyle silences her quickly, worried that his companions might hear. The spirit glares at him, snapping that he should at least buy her dinner before getting handsy with the shushing. She then asks if he even knows who she truly is, but Kyle cuts her off again, stating that he already knows she is a weapon crafted by the magic queen Salonia, the ruler of Zarls during its golden age. He explains further that the sword carries fragments of the queen's wisdom and consciousness, which shocks the spirit, who demands to know how he could possibly be aware of that. Kyle promises to reveal the truth later, but insists that for now, he must clear the final challenge. The spirit decides to humor him and retreats back into the gemstone embedded in the sword's hilt. Kyle seizes the sword, and suddenly the spirit unleashes her ability to peer into his mind. She scans through his past life memories, then materializes in her human form again, utterly stunned, asking if all of it was genuine. Kyle confirms it and adds that he currently holds the heart of the divine dragon. Salonia is floored, realizing that time travel magic might actually exist. Before they can continue, Kyle's friends arrive, searching for him. Kyle urges Salonia to play along because he doesn't want his companions learning the full story yet. She reluctantly nods. When Lise and the others step in, Kyle loudly boasts that he has acquired a legendary intelligent sword named Salonia. The spirit joins in, playing the role, and soon becomes part of the gang. While munching on Lisa's freshly baked cookies, Salonia explains to the others that she is a fragment of the magic queen left within the blade to judge challengers who sought her sword. She reveals that if Kyle had been unworthy, she would have triggered a doomsday trap, collapsing the dungeon and crushing them all. But since he passed, she allows him to wield her power. She also instructs him to take the magic bag that links directly to the treasure room, so he can withdraw gold at will. Afterward, they head straight for the capital city. Kyle declares that since they now have wealth, it's time to buy themselves high-quality gear, and he makes a beeline for the most prestigious weapon shop in town. At the front desk, the receptionist greets them with frosty politeness, and asks for a referral from an existing customer. Kyle suddenly recalls that this store has a members-only vibe, where new buyers must pay a hefty deposit. The receptionist quotes a fee of 10,000 coins per person, so Kyle casually tosses over 5 Zarls coins, which easily cover the cost for everyone. The stunned receptionist immediately ushers them inside, where the shopkeeper Vespa welcomes them warmly. Salonia spots a few weapons forged by a once-renowned blacksmith, and starts rambling about how she knew the guide personally, and that he wasn't all that great anyway. Kyle quickly clamps her chatter, nervously laughing to Vespa that the girl has a wild imagination. To shut her up, they bribe her with snacks. Kyle inspects the top-grade armor available, and Vespa proudly presents a set crafted from dragon leather and phoenix feathers. He explains how rare and expensive the materials are, but Kyle doesn't bother haggling and buys it outright. He then tells his companions to grab whatever gear they need for the road ahead. Soon after, Lee selects a pair of gauntlets, while Oza picks up an amulet housing a spirit stone. Thean grabs himself some armor but immediately starts flirting shamelessly with the receptionist, who bolts in terror, convinced she's being chased by a creep. Kyle then asks Vespa for enchanted stones. The shopkeeper shows him one infused with explosion magic, and Kyle takes it without hesitation. He also requests stones effective against reptilian monsters, so Vespa brings out a stock of blizzard stones. Kyle cheerfully declares that he'll buy every last one along with the shop's entire supply of healing potions. Watching the growing mountain of purchases, Vespa nearly faints at the size of the order, and the sheer fortune being spent in front of him. Once their spree is over, Thean worries that their wild spending might spark nasty rumors, but Kyle reassures him that they will be leaving the capital tomorrow, so gossip won't matter. Hearing that, Thean immediately bolts off to hit the taverns and chase women, while Lise and Oza decide to explore the city together. Salonia also wants to stuff herself with every snack in sight, but Kyle pulls her aside for a private talk. Once they settle inside a hotel room, he asks her if the future can really be altered. Salonia explains her theory, saying that when he traveled back, he slipped into a parallel universe. The timeline here won't match his memories perfectly, though major events will still roll out, like the colossal demonic invasion 3 years from now. However, she assures him that with effort, certain outcomes can indeed be changed. That much is enough to give Kyle hope. Suddenly, a thought strikes him. Since he carried the heart of the divine dragon into this world, that must mean this universe's version of the heart still rests with the Demon King. Salonia listens to his concern and then offers her own theory. She recalls that the most forbidden spell in existence is the soul fusion ritual, where two souls combine to amplify magical power. Back in her age, her empire's scholars attempted it, but they failed miserably. She then asks Kyle to consider what happened to the soul of this world's Kyle, since clearly he himself came from elsewhere. It hits him instantly, his soul merged with the local Kyle's soul. Salonia confirms it, saying he has achieved the impossible, the very soul fusion her brightest researchers couldn't pull off. Kyle recalls the surge in his magical power earlier and realizes everything makes sense now. He asks whether the fusion comes with side effects, but Salonia tells him no one can say, because it's never been accomplished before. Later that night, Lise and Oza share a room. Lise falls asleep quickly, while the elf beauty bathes in moonlight with a glass of wine in hand. She muses that this short journey turned out far better than she imagined, and inevitably her thoughts drift to Kyle. She even catches herself smiling at the idea of him, until she suddenly remembers they're supposed to perform a special ceremony tonight, since it's the full moon. Meanwhile, Kyle is out in the woods, trying to catch his breath after an exhausting training session. He starts chatting with Salonia, bragging about how incredible the sword is, claiming that other mithril blades can't hold a candle to it. Salonia points out that this sword isn't even made of mithril. But before she can elaborate further, Oza dashes up in a rush. Kyle asks why she's sprinting, and she reminds him that tonight is the only night they can complete the application of contract to safeguard her real name. Kyle sheepishly admits he forgot and suggests postponing because he's exhausted. Oza firmly refuses, insisting they cannot delay for another month since her true name is on the line. Reluctantly, Kyle agrees, and Oza begins carving an intricate magic circle into the ground. The ritual, she explains, is usually reserved for elven marriages, where both partners exchange their true names as vows to remain together forever. The memory of Kyle proposing it still makes her heart flutter, and she can hardly believe she's about to undergo such a ritual with someone she only met a month ago. Once she finishes, she rouses Kyle and orders him into the circle. She then activates the formation, and Kyle recalls the last time they did this. Oza solemnly asks if he swears not to reveal her real name or wield it for evil. Kyle agrees without hesitation. She declares the contract complete, but Kyle remembers that they sealed it with a kiss in his past life. Acting on impulse, he kisses her. Oza allows it for a heartbeat before turning crimson and shoving him away, calling him a pervert and demanding to know how he dares kiss her. Kyle hurriedly explains that he thought a kiss was part of the ritual, but she snaps that it's only for weddings. Kyle awkwardly suggests they treat it as an unfortunate accident. Oza explodes, literally, by blasting him with fire magic. By morning, both Kyle and Oza are bleary-eyed from their fiery clash, while Theron is just as drowsy after spending the entire night striking out with women at the taverns. Kyle brushes him off and turns to Oza, asking whether she'll keep traveling with them even after the contract is done. She replies that she has no choice until he explains how he learned her true name. Kyle secretly feels relieved at her answer, but Lise quickly snaps him out of his romantic daydreams by demanding to know why exactly they're heading toward the city of Arken. Kyle instantly panics, knowing he can't possibly tell Lise the actual truth. So, he blurts out that Salonia has the ability to vaguely predict the future and that she told him to head toward Arken. With that excuse in place, the group continues their journey until they finally arrive at the city. Coincidentally, Princess Mila of the Zergus Empire is also in town on official duty. The streets overflow with citizens eager to catch even a glimpse of her, and naturally, Kyle and his friends join the crowd as well. While Princess Mila wins over everyone with her elegance and kindness, Kyle doesn't spare her much attention. Instead, his eyes are locked onto her bodyguard Zentos, one of his closest companions from his past life. Zentos notices the intense stare but wisely refrains from reacting in front of the public. Meanwhile, Salonia leans toward Kyle and asks if this is the princess he mentioned before. Kyle confirms, adding grimly that Princess Mila is destined to die in 2 days. Later, inside their lodging, Kyle explains further to Salonia. He says that Mila is currently here to offer condolences to villages ravaged by the Hydra monster. However, in 2 days, when she travels to a nearby settlement, her entourage will be ambushed by the Hydra itself, and she will be slain. To the world, it will appear to be a tragic accident befalling a kind-hearted princess. But in Kyle's eyes, it is pure foolishness, since only an idiot walks directly into a place crawling with rampaging monsters. Salonia counters, suggesting that it could also be an assassination plot rather than mere misfortune. That makes Kyle recall old rumors from his previous life, whispers that Mila's half-brother, Prince Carinus, orchestrated the attempt on her life. Nothing was ever proven, of course. Still, Kyle remains suspicious, especially since the prince happens to be in this very city at the moment. Not that anyone has seen him, Carinus is infamous for being a reclusive shut-in, practically glued to his chambers. In Kyle's own words, he is basically the royal equivalent of a basement gamer. But whatever the reason, Kyle doesn't care. The only thing that matters to him is ensuring that Mila survives. If he can save her, he'll be celebrated as a hero at the very beginning of his journey. The story will be continued in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.